You're already laughing.
That song just makes me smile.
Good. Well, that's good.
It's good to know that, I don't know why, but it does.
So you all right this morning?
I'm questionable this morning.
The questionable Leigh Stocker from Summercrest, everybody. Why are you questionable?
Oh, well, as I was mentioning off air, this is the first day ever in my entire life that I actually had the thought that I feel old.
Well, you don't look old.
Well, that's what's important, really.
Right, yeah.
When it comes down to it.
Appearances can be deceiving, but you don't look old. So.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm really not old.
No, you're really not. No, compared to, the people that you work with.
Right. Well, somebody's once said to me, they're like, you're middle-aged. And I said, well, I guess that depends on how old I am when I die as to whether I'm actually middle-aged right now or not. I'm 42.
Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with that.
No. Hey, I will tell you what, I'm way better in my 40s than I was in my 30s.
What's your standard of comparison?
Myself.
Oh, okay. So it's a self-inflating comment. I see. Okay,
Nobody ever accused me of not having an ego.
That's true. No, you haven't met. I have the biggest ego in the room.
You do have the biggest ego in the room.
Wow.
I do not.
See, I can say that about myself, but if you say that, then that becomes like, is that? And
nobody has ever accused me of not speaking the truth.
That's true.
So
yes, you do speak the truth, but that hurt.
Oh, does that hurt?
Stung,
Are you crying?
Stung a little
Is that
bit.
a tear?
I'm crying on the inside.
I don't believe that for some reason.
Oh, you got a sheath of papers with you. Look at that.
I do. I have information. And, we've been talking a lot lately about Alzheimer's and other types of dementia. And one thing I wanted to
Is that why you took notes, so you wouldn't forget?
You'd be surprised. You should see my office. I have like 4 calendars on my walls, 5 piles of Post-its. I need to write everything down.
Well, that's good because, it's and is your office a mess?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you know what's said? Geniuses or people with higher intellects are far less tidy than their intellectually stunted counterparts.
Well, you should check out my office, my car, and my home.
Mess, and mess?
Yes, and yes, and yes.
The genius behind Summercrest, ladies and gentlemen, Leigh Stocker.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, what are we rapping about this morning?
We are rapping again about dementia, and the reason I've been talking about this a lot lately is because, in part because I think I want people to know what one of the things that we do at Summercrest is, and we haven't gone over this lately. We do independent living services, assisted living services, and we have a secure memory care community called The Seasons at Summercrest. And we actually have an available studio in The Seasons at Summercrest, which has been the first time in like 3 years that I've had something available in our memory care. So I wanted people to know that, but I also wanted people to know that we are in our area, the only memory care community of its kind. We're secure, which most memory care communities are, but we have our building was built with the intent and purpose to house people with dementia. So the design of it is set up in such a way that it is conducive to what people with dementia need. We're not a retrofit. We have a defend-in-place evacuation plan, or I don't know if you call it an evacuation plan, but it's something that's unique and important for dementia care communities. The reason is when you have people with dementia, many people have a tendency to wander. So if you need to evacuate for an emergency, you don't want people to go outside of the building. So all of our studios are fireproof for up to 3 hours, which, where we are located, the fire department's about a half a mile away down the hill. So they're there in less than 3 minutes if, when we do drills and such. But what it means for the defend in place is if there is an emergency, people go into their rooms and they are protected in that space. So again, that's important because you don't want people with dementia going outside of the building, because if they are given a chance, they may have the tendency to wander away. Additionally, oftentimes people with memory impairment have mobility issues. And so trying to get people with dementia who have mobility issues out of the building can be catastrophic, truthfully. So it's important that people understand the reason for a secure and specialized memory care community. It's not just, it's the purpose of it is for the safety of the resident. And sometimes, people have a hard time deciding when it is the right time for a memory care community for their loved ones. And the first thing to look at is your loved one unsafe at home? Has he or she gone outside during the middle of the night, the middle of the day when you've turned around to do the dishes? But, that's your first trigger as to whether the current environment your loved one is in is the right place to be.
I have a solution for that.
I'm sure you do.
Invisible fence.
I can't even touch that. What do you want me to do with that?
Am I wrong?
Well, that's a rather inhumane way to deal with a behavior problem. But whatever works in your family.
They're not going to wander far.
Okay. You know what? And bringing the segment to a close. I'll see you next
we still
week.
got a couple minutes.
Oh, we do? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, personally, I don't. I have. We have one of those for our dog, so I don't see putting one of those.
I'm totally kidding. I would never advocate that somebody
totally
invisible fence.
But it's very rare that I'm at a loss for words.
Yeah.
Let me refer to my notes here.
Yeah.
Second thing to recognize as to whether it's time for a memory care community is your loved one's health at risk. And what that comes down to is, are you as a caregiver able to provide all of the services that the person with dementia needs? And they often say that when people get to mid-stage dementia, and of course beyond, is when they're going to need 24-hour supervision. You need to keep an eye on that person all the time because their behaviors are constantly changing and they're constantly unpredictable. Mm-hmm. So if your health is at risk, therefore their health is at risk. As a caregiver, what we tend to do is put ourselves last, and then we get tired, we miss out on sleep. Maybe our stress lands us in the hospital, and then what is the plan of action for the person who's living at home with dementia? Do you have somebody who's going to be able to come in and take care of that person 24 hours a day? If not, it's definitely time to start looking at a community.
It's, when you think about the layout of the building, you're just talking about evacuating, or if there is a critical situation that occurs in the building, how do you deal with that? And that's probably something that we talk about, especially like during Fire Safety Week, and that we talk about the importance of having a plan inside your home and making sure your smoke detectors are up to speed, and replacing your batteries. They're going to be changing the clocks here in a couple of weeks, and so when we do that, it's going to be. I know that look of dread, like it's going to start getting dark early. But when you change the clocks, you check your batteries and your smoke detector, and you always have a plan. There's always an action plan. And that's one of the things we've had so many conversations about memory care and about dementia. But one of the things that has never, even as emergency contingency minded as I am, I never really thought about that. If you have a person who is confused or is physically disabled or has a mental deficiency, and now you're trying to work with that person. I would imagine that for people who are providing care at home, and this is probably something that they haven't thought about either, is the importance of doing a fire drill, or at least coming up with an idea. We call them tabletops, thinking about it just from the standpoint of, if something were to happen, what do I do, and how do I handle this, and how do I do this so that way I'm having as minimal of a I guess you would say a psychological impact, because that's really where the impact is going to come from, as minimal of a psychological impact as I possibly can on the person that I'm providing care for.
Well, if you're at home, it is really important, just as it is in a community, in which we do, of course, at Summercrest, is to... we have fire drills. So it's basically, it's a regulation that we need to have fire drills, but it's also practice so that it's not completely foreign to the person if and when it happens. So I would recommend that people regularly practice it at home. That way, your loved one that has dementia is in some sort of habit. We know that people with dementia need routine and habit and things of that nature. So get it worked into their routine. So if it happens, it's not a huge surprise. Alert your neighbors of what's going on with your loved one so that they can be aware as well. It's important to really have your neighbors and your whole community involved in the care of somebody. That's what happens in the seasons at Summercrest, but we're an enclosed, secure community. And so we're trained to do it. So, keep your neighbors on alert as well.
All right, Leigh Stocker from Summercrest. You can read more on their website at www.summercrest.net. Again, summercrest.net, 169 Summer Street in Newport, New Hampshire, and 603-863-8181 is the phone number. Again, 863-8181. You can always email Leigh as well, too. lstocker@summercrest.net. That's lstocker@summercrest.net. Always a pleasure having you in the studio.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
All right. Have a great day, and we will talk next week.
Sounds good.
All right. Very well. 748, you are listening to First Look on 99.7 FM WNTK, 98.9 FM, and 1490 AM on your radio dial. Don't forget about those smartphone apps as well, too. WNTK or WUVR at your Android or iPhone store, and anywhere around the world at WNTK.com. News and weather coming up right after this.
New England's first FM talk radio station. News Talk 99.7 WNTK.